Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Viking Wolf. Viking Wolf is a Norwegian horror movie that tells the story of Tala, a high school student who just moved to the village of Tibo along with her family. In an effort to fit in better and make some friends, she decides to attend a late-night party, during which she witnesses a gruesome murder take place and is attacked in the process. As the police try to make sense of the murder, Tala begins to suffer from mysterious visions and dreams that slowly change who she is as a person. A key clue is soon revealed that the murder was committed not by a human, but by a wolf, and the creature must be stopped before it can further hurt Tala and anyone else. I'm a bit torn as to what I think of this movie. I found it started strong in the beginning with its dark, slow burn presentation, but the longer it went on, the more annoying and generic it became. It's still a decent watch, but disappointing for me when I think of how much better it could have been. The biggest problem the movie has is with its characters, starting with the main character Tala. Now, she is okay in the traditional sense of her being the protagonist who the audience is supposed to sympathize with, but she never goes past being okay because of how stereotypically she's written. She's the same sort of new kid in town that has a hard time fitting in, has trouble making friends except for one person, and has all kinds of family drama that already feels tired the moment it pops up. It's fine for the purposes of the plot, but to say it's predictable is a bit of an understatement. The only thing I liked about her character is the way she experiences hallucinations, visions, and dreams that torment her psyche. There's an interesting sequence of events involved with them that become more intense as events start to unravel, and this did a good job of keeping me invested to see if Tala would overcome them or not. The only other notable character in the movie is her mother Liv, who works as a police officer in Tibo. She's sort of an extra protagonist who investigates the mystery behind the murder in Tibo while also having her own issues with Tala, and I found the movie's approach with her to be a mixed bag. I like that the movie is able to balance between her and Tala fairly well without disrupting the pacing, at least at first, but the relationship portrayed between mother and daughter isn't all that great. Anytime they share a scene together, it usually involves some kind of argument or disagreement, so I never got any sense of deeper connection involved with them. There is another character in the form of Jonas, but he's not even worth mentioning. He's the cliche nice guy who's seemingly the only person in town able to relate to Tala, which never feels authentic because he's also friends with the douchebags who bully Tala too. He's pretty much only there to tack on a love story angle between him and Tala, and it just never feels right. The rest of the characters were completely forgettable. They either aren't explored to their full potential, such as with Tala's deaf sister Jenny, or as cannon fodder for the wolf to chew up. I know I spent a lot of time critiquing the characters, but they really were that mediocre. Thankfully, the movie does somewhat succeed as a suspenseful horror flick in spite of its cliche characters. What I appreciated the most about it is how it was presented not as a typical slasher body count movie in the beginning anyway, but as more of a slow burn detective story that becomes increasingly more intense and violent over time. The movie begins with a Viking backstory that does a good job in providing context for what happens later on. It does tend to lean into the overly long exposition side of things, but even so, it's great with how it sets up the tone and stage for events to follow, like some sort of grim fable that comes to life. The slow-paced tension that plays out throughout the murder mystery is ultimately what kept me hooked into watching it. Seeing the police try to put the pieces together and figure out if it's a man or a wolf responsible for the murder adds an element of time to the story, which kept me guessing as to when or if another murder would take place. I was surprised that the movie didn't completely hinge on being a gore fest. Apart from the murder in the first few minutes, it rarely kills off any characters in the first two acts, instead setting up the mythology surrounding the wolf and building up to the eventual reveal. It mostly knows when to be violent and when to be disturbing, which I appreciated. I enjoyed seeing the wolf, which actually turns out to be a werewolf once it was revealed. Its design looks threatening enough to fit the backstory it has as the Hound of Hell, the horror it inflicts upon others fits its savage nature, and the special effects used to pull it off actually look convincing. However, even with all this taken into consideration, I wouldn't necessarily say that the movie is scary. This is because, just as with the characters, the wolf comes off as a big cliche, as it has all the same tropes one would come to expect from a typical werewolf story. It's weak to silver, is affected by a full moon, and is able to afflict others with its condition, as can be seen with Tala. Almost everything about it is borrowed from other werewolf movies like The Howling and An American Werewolf in London, and if it weren't for the Viking angle, there would have been absolutely nothing unique about it. It's not bad that the movie borrows elements from other movies, but with such stale characters driving its story forward, it becomes increasingly more frustrating to watch the movie squander its slow burn tension and intriguing backstory in the first half in favor of a more senseless bloodbath in the second half. It feels like the movie is trying to tell two stories in one movie, and in fairness, a lot of that is because of the dynamic between Tala and her mother. It's mostly able to balance these two in the first half, but after the halfway point, it starts to go off the deep end and become a lot more silly and predictable. And it's a shame because the movie looks really good. Once again, Norwegian cinematography never ceases to amaze me, as this movie features lots of shots of endless forests and other places in dark blue color tones, which creates a feeling of unease that suggests anything could be out there waiting to claim a victim. I think the movie could handle handle juggling both of its central concepts at the same time, as they're both tied to the idea of a werewolf in the first place anyway. However, it ends up buckling under the weight of how much plot it has to carry, and it certainly doesn't help that just about everything about it is unoriginal anyway. Overall, Viking Wolf is a disappointingly average horror flick that doesn't live up to the hype of its namesake. If you enjoy horror movies that revolve around werewolves and you don't mind watching one that's cliche, this one might be up your alley. It treads a thin tightrope between mystery and horror, and it does well at first, but the characters and cliches ultimately undermine what it sets out to accomplish. It is still fun to watch in parts, but it ends up having more bark than bite. What did you think about this movie? Did you like seeing how it balanced multiple narratives, or were you also bothered by how cliche it was? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Viking Wolf. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the Australian biographical drama, True Spirit. Bye bye!